¿Qué tal? Bienvenidos y muchas gracias por estar aquí en presencia de Fiona Petroni, iniciando el ciclo con la primera conferencia. Eh, que, bueno, les voy a platicar un poquito de qué con quién vamos a platicar el día de hoy. Bueno, Fiona Petroni, Granata, diseñadora y directora creativa con amplia experiencia internacional, tanto como consultora externa autónoma como en funciones de gestión interna. Fiona cuenta con más de 30 años de experiencia en el mercado de la ropa de lujo, los accesorios y el estilo de vida. Esta está especializada en planificación de proyectos, merchandising, diseño y desarrollo de colecciones en numerosas categorías y segmentos de mercado. También ha adquirido amplia experiencia en áreas ajenas al diseño y actualmente asesora en desarrollo de marcas, marketing, merchandising, estrategia de venta al por menor y distribución. Paralelamente a su carrera en la industria, colabora con POLIMODA, creando y contribuyendo a programas académicos y dando conferencias sobre gestión de productos, merchandising, estrategia de producto y branding. Y bueno, se me olvidó presentarme a mí. Pero ahora que ya saben muy bien que Fiona nos va a platicar un poco de Luxury Retail-tainment, yo voy a estar moderando esta primera conferencia y yo me presento, soy Olivia Mesa, soy editora general de Miau Magazine, un medio de moda independiente especializado en moda, obviamente, vaya la redundancia, y nos pueden encontrar como miaumag.mx. Nosotros somos media partners de este ciclo de encuentro creativo y bueno, estoy muy feliz de estar por aquí. Cualquier duda que tengan, estaré aquí leyéndoles y al final vamos a interactuar con Fiona con una sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Bienvenida, Fiona.
Okay, hello everyone. I apologize that I'm not speaking to you in Spanish, but I'm very, very happy to be with you today to discuss with you as part of the program this very, very interesting initiative, Luxury Fashion and Lifestyle Retail-tainment. We are going through a very, very big shift regarding the whole retail reality. And this is a global reality. I'm going to talk you through a little bit of background and history in order to contextualize, also then discussing what these changes actually mean for the fashion industry. So yes, first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about the origins of retail and then the origins of luxury. I am actually going to share a PowerPoint with you in order to underline the different arguments that I'm discussing, but I don't see it actually on the screen. Perhaps if you might let me know where it is. Excellent. Okay, super. Thank you very much. So as I said, we're discussing new approaches to retail strategy and collection merchandising, because of course the merchandising aspect follows on directly from how we bring a product to market and therefore how we sell it. So let's go to the next slide. If we go to what is luxury, the next slide. Because after all, let's try and define what does luxury actually mean? Because this is something, of course, we have to understand before we can actually begin talking about how we retail luxury. Because luxury can be something tangible, but also intangible. Unfortunately, I can't see the slide on the screen. I need to have slide 2. No. Let's see if we can maybe try again sharing my screen. If you can disable your share, and then I'll try sharing mine, because there seems to be some sort of technical problem. Because I'm not actually seeing the slides on the screen. And therefore, I imagine that no one else is seeing them either. Okay, good. Now, right. I don't see the slide, so let me just talk you through what I was going to be discussing. So luxury, the word luxury comes from Latin. It suggests dislocation, so a type of removal. So therefore, this suggests that the luxury sphere is connected to experience, objects, services, and is marked by a high symbolic value. So therefore, it's not necessarily tangible aspects to do with quality, touch, tactile aspects, fragrance, the feel of something, but it's to do also with this symbolic value, the experience. And this experience, of course, is what attracts customers to spend also large amounts of money that are not necessarily connected to the actual costs of creating this product. So really, when we talk about luxury, we're talking about a reality aimed at satisfying desires that transcend real needs. So therefore, of course, it's not a need, it's a desire. It's also very, very important to understand the context of this by, of course, looking at brands and looking at brand heritage. So if we could go to slide 3. Brand heritage, and we can see this also, of course, very, very much part of, especially if we're talking about European brands, how brand heritage is connected to values, is connected to perhaps iconic pieces, is connected to what we call brand identifiers. These are all aspects within the design language that, of course, fashion brands also use to develop the aura, the feeling, the memories also in their collections that they can, of course, then apply to a physical retail environment. So Brand heritage is rooted in the DNA of a brand. It's something that's specifically connected to tradition and history. And therefore, in the consumer's mind, luxury products must have a story to tell, a story that is the story of something that's refined, something that's precious, something also that is rare. And if we are to look at some of the most celebrated fashion brands, such as Chanel or Dior, we can see how, and I've included here a photograph of Chanel, Coco Chanel, who is wearing her much celebrated pearls. Consider how those pearls now have become, of course, such an important part of the design language of the brand. Not just the pearls. Maybe we could talk about the Chanel boucle. Maybe we could talk about the Chanel camellia, the Chanel gold chains. Therefore, this transcends a single product and becomes a possibility, an ability to build products based on these iconic elements. So from here, we should then begin perhaps to talk a little bit about the context of retail. So let's go to slide 4. So slide 4, the origins of retail for luxury products. This is a time in the 1800s that coincided with the development of the Industrial Revolution. And it's quite interesting if we were to look at the layout, how from a retail merchandising point of view, luxury products are featured perhaps in department stores. It's very, very similar to the way that we see that today. If one goes onto the ground floor of a department store, and ordinarily you'll see perhaps more aspirational products, products that have an opening price point, still that piece of luxury, but more accessible, more aspirational. So it might have been fragrance, or it might have been small leather goods or gloves or small accessories. And this is very, very true even today. So here we can see this is considered to be the first department store in the world. This is Le Bon Marché, which is on the Rive Gauche in Paris. It's the oldest department store. It's still very, very much in existence, and it's very, very interesting because it's managed to remain contemporary and of its time, as of course it's continued to satisfy the demands of consumers throughout a very, very long period of time, almost, yes, more than 150 years. The second department store was then opened again in Paris, which is Galeries Lafayette. And that, of course, then prompted, again, as I said, through the Industrial Revolution, where there began to be the manufacturing of luxury products that were aimed at a very, very specific type of social class. It could give them also a meeting place to go to socialize, to meet, to pass the time of day while they were shopping. So perhaps we could also talk about this as experiential retailing. So it's a big, big part of us also as human beings, that when we shop, we also socialize. If we think also of the way that many cities are laid out historically, cities will be built around squares, and squares were also, of course, a place to socialize, to perhaps buy from the food market, but also socialize and exchange ideas. So this is also very, very much the idea of the department store, the retail entity. Is also very, very connected to this social human aspect. And this brings us to the shopping mall. So if we could look at slide number 5. The shopping mall is an invention. This you're actually seeing here, the first shopping mall in the world. This is in Milan, and it still very, very much exists. It took 12 years to build. It was completed in 1877, and it's the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele. So it's a very, very focal point in the city of Milan, very, very important historical focal point. It was actually where the first Prada store was opened in 1913. So it's still very, very much feature of high-end retail and luxury brands. It's actually named after the King of Italy. And we can see the approach here is quite different from department store shopping, because this is open air, but covered at the same time. So again, providing a type of promenade, providing a physical space where prospective customers could meet, could socialize, could eat, could drink, and also who, of course, could buy luxury products. So this is very, very important to understand, as I said, to conceptualize also the historic and traditional aspects of luxury retailing and the access to high quality consumer products. We'll take a big jump now to a more contemporary environment, where we can see the development from retail, multi-brand retail to monobrand retail, but not forgetting concept stores. So we're much more familiar today now with the idea of concept stores. So if we could look at slide 6. This is an example of a concept store, a very, very celebrated concept store in Milan called Corso Como. And the idea of a concept store is, yes, of course, it's still a multi-brand retailer. So multi-brand retailer means it has many, many different brands under one roof. But concept stores are much more selective also in their focus. Usually in the case of Corso Como, it's also very, very, very well curated and very well edited. So often what you see in a concept store, you will not see generally in multi-brand retailing, even when we're talking about luxury. So often concept stores have the power and the reputation in order to develop products just specifically for them. And concept stores are much celebrated in major capitals around the world. Corso Como is not the only one. Perhaps you might also be familiar with Dover Street Market, for example. So again, a very, very specific, edited, conceptual approach to retail, to multi-brand retail. So this brings us to mono-brand retail. So this is where fashion brands control their own customer experience. So if we could go to slide 7. So mono-brand retail is where one single brand retails the luxury product directly to its consumer. And this, of course, offers many, many advantages, some of which, of course, are monetary, because brands then can realize much more important margins if they're selling direct to consumer their products. The idea of the monobrand really began in the 1980s, 1990s. And this coincided with the period where fashion brands began to invest in lifestyle, the idea of lifestyle. So it wasn't just the importance of one single product or one single product category, but creating what we call extensions, so multiple product categories that celebrated the importance of their core category in order to draw a customer into a more lifestyle approach. So perhaps brands who were more specialized in ready-to-wear began to develop leather accessories or fragrance or eyewear. And these lifestyle products, of course, can be retailed together in order to create what was a very, very inviting narrative for customers to step into. So by creating a mono-brand store, it gives the customer the opportunity to experience the brand in a way that multi-brand stores offer only to a limited extent, because multi-brand stores, of course, are thinking about their own branding, their own importance, whereas a mono-brand store, this is also a very, very important part of the architecture, the interior design, the materials that are used, how the collections are laid out, because a customer or prospective customer should be left with the idea of pictures and memories and feelings that they take away with them, that of course are part of the allure and the narrative of the brand itself. So this is something that really has shaped also the understanding and also the strategy of the retailing of luxury products. Of course, there was a big pivot, or perhaps a cataclysmic change that was then provided by COVID. So perhaps if we could look at slide 8. What happened during COVID? If we could look at slide 8, what happened during COVID? Of course, everyone was at home, and this is true globally. Everyone was at home. We couldn't go out to shop. We couldn't shop in physical retail stores. So, of course, we were all shopping online. It was also predicted that customers perhaps wouldn't go back to shopping in physical stores after the end of the pandemic. But, of course, we know that that hasn't been the case. But certainly post-COVID created a different type of landscape and a different way of thinking also for fashion brands to think about how to satisfy customer desire. Consumer demands regarding ethics, environmental concerns, transparency also increased, so a more sustainable approach also to retail and to also architecture, the development, the interior branding, the interior design also of stores, and also accelerated a more sort of technological approach to what one could experience in a physical retail store. So both the physical experience, but also the technological experience. So the development of, for example, changing rooms that had webcams where you could actually see how you looked at every angle, or perhaps digital screens where you could actually do your own merchandising and look to see if your size was available in store, or also digital screens that showed the latest catwalk. But where this physical realm and this technological realm was then going hand in hand. So customers, and this differs really sort of from geographical area to geographical area, but perhaps it's mostly in the Orient that this was first felt and then filtered through also to Europe and also Latin America and the United States. So COVID accelerating luxury market evolution. If we could look at slide 9, here we can see how COVID-19 accelerated these changes. So a growing new demographic, and this was the arrival of a much, much higher percentage of Gen Z customers who are also, of course, looking for a more experiential type of retailing. Emerging values, enlarging values, so this emerging aspect of something that was more ethical and sustainability, so ethics and aesthetics. Morphing geographies, because also here the shift within certain markets was changing from perhaps Asia to Europe and to the United States. And then, of course, a growing phygital ecosystem. We call it a combination between physical and digital, so a growing phygital ecosystem. And we can see here on the figures, distribution ecosystem merging digital and physical dimensions, how it increased hugely, more than double between 2019 and is predicted to grow in 2025. So this had a very, very big knock-on effect in the way that, of course, brands were handling their subsequent retail strategies. Let's look at slide 10. So here we'll talk, or we can see the realities of omni-channel. So omni-channel, and I've listed here really the sort of most important aspects of growth. And what was important, what became very, very important to customers. So, of course, much of this was based on customer service, such as in-store appointments or customer service benefits. The possibility also for customers to pre-order. Perhaps we're pre-ordering online, but then picking it up in store. Other aspects, again, service-orientated aspects, such as perhaps buying it online, not liking it, but returning it to store. So click and collect also, again, customer service. This was also the time where many brands, of course, began to perfect their live chat or chat bots. So both from a digital point of view, so from an e-commerce platform point of view, but also where customers or prospective customers could interact with sales associates who are actually live, and they could see them through technology, through video, while they were making their online purchases. Product customization, a very, very important part that has been very, very much ongoing. So developing the product together with the brand, having your initials, having some sort of personalization, changing the fabrics, choosing your own color. So these were all aspects that became fundamentally important to retail because customers were more and more in the driving seat and had more and more power and autonomy in order to drive their own desires. A very, very important aspect also post-COVID, and if we could go to slide 11, was, of course, the introduction of hospitality. Here we can see, this is actually the Marchesi pasticceria and coffee shop, again in Vittorio Emanuele, that I showed you earlier in Milan, which is actually owned by Prada. Prada began a strategy of buying into hospitality by creating their own from scratch with their own intellectual property, but also buying existing heritage, hospitality, coffee, and cake retailers. So are very, very connected also to this whole lifestyle element, because customers were reacting very, very well to this sort of furthered, heightened aspect of lifestyle. So not just buying the bag, not just buying the ready-to-wear, not just buying the eyewear or wearing the fragrance, but also buying into eating the food, drinking the drinks. And this then, of course, developed further opportunities for furniture, for home design, for textiles and soft furnishings. Prada were particularly experimental regarding this, and they also opened their own private, the family's private contemporary art collection, which became open to the public in Milan in the Fondazione Prada. And in the Fondazione Prada, they also opened a bar and restaurant. So if you could look at slide 12, the bar and restaurant in Fondazione Prada is quite extraordinary. Also, the community buzz that was provided by the opening of this restaurant was also through the fact that this was designed by Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson, of course, is a very, very well-known American film director who has worked with the Prada Group on many films and videos, also for communication strategies. And we can see that this ties into very, very well the whole experiential aspect of the visit to something that is much more than a transactional or just to eat food or drink drinks. So this was also very, very connected to these behavioral changes from the consumer, but also, of course, the change in strategy for fashion brands. So now let's look at these behavioral changes. So if we could move to slide 13. If we look at a type of trend forecasting, because trend forecasting is very, very important to predict what is going to happen tomorrow. No one has a crystal ball, so we need to find, realities from a sociological point of view. We need analysis of individuals and communities and markets in order to help us understand these changes and then what these changes will bring. So trends that follow explore the yearning for what we call reenactment, a type of looking for wonder, re-enchantment, are three overlapping needs. So first, a quest for reawakening, so a more sensorial, comforting approach that satisfies our desires and gives us a certain type of sense of security in a chaotic and confusing world. The second, a desire to transcend the everyday. So wanting something special, where the consumer is not happy to just buy the product, but they demand and desire something much more than that, something that's much more than themselves, part of something bigger. And then third, an optimistic impulse to be hopeful, to also usher in a more hopeful future. So here on, if we could go to slide 14, if we can see here on slide 14, it actually analyzes very, very much within the global markets of China, the United Kingdom, United States, and other countries, a type of key of what is important to individuals, what's important to the market, what's important to consumers. Some of these worries, we can see how they conflict and change from market to market. But we can see that some of the most obvious are climate change. So again, this is ushered in a more sensitivity. Crime, infectious diseases, of course, post-COVID, inflation. So these life realities that also perhaps push the prospective customer, the individual, the market, into looking for a type of experience, a type of narrative, a type of storytelling that they want to step into, which of course takes away the pain. So if we can go now to slide 15. So the future of the store will be determined by the relationship that the brand has with its sales associates and its customers. With all the efficiencies that you can get from purchasing items online, there remains the need and the desire to be with others. So go back to what I was talking about before when we're looking at the historical context of retail: sharing, community, promenading, walking together, social cohesion, and a type of humanistic element also to sharing a shared space, whether it's an open air mall, whether it's a department store in the 1800s, whether it's perhaps also a new conceptual monobrand store today. So we can see here what's very, very important to prospective customers. And as I mentioned, hospitality is a huge, huge driver. So we have dining options at more than half, more than 58%. But we also have entertainment. We have public green spaces. So again, this aspect of ethics and sustainability. We have self-care. And we can also see how there's a huge growth in wellness, wellness products, self-care products, cosmetics. Also for fashion brands are having huge success in the growth of this area. We also have, and we can see this in the development of some concept stores and monobrand stores, art exhibitions, or the connection of art with retail. This is also a big, big part of the strategy of Isabelle Marant, the French brand. She often works with artists in order to create installations within retail stores that almost look like a contemporary art exhibition rather than actually a retail store. And then, of course, we also have, which is very, very important for families and perhaps also for working mothers, play areas and gyms and fitness centers, which, of course, are also a big, big part of the development of this whole attitude to something that is more lifestyle orientated, but also wellness, fitness aspects. So segging all of these aspects into one single experiential space that customers will visit for retail. So if we go to the next slide, if we go to slide 16, so what can brands do in the age of wonder? So this very, very important trend. Brands can do more to deliver inspiration. So according to a very, very important media company who have conducted an exhausted amount of data analysis on society, 61% of people say that companies and brands aren't doing anything original these days. So therefore, why should we visit physical stores? Why should we buy? Why should we invest in fashion brands if we're not being given that excitement and that type of escapism? So this brings us to the area of today that we're becoming perhaps a little bit more familiar with, a type of out-of-life experience. So if we could go to slide 17. Here, this looks at artificial intelligence, and we're becoming a little bit more aware of what this perhaps might mean. Brands are racing to harness the vast and awe-inspiring potential of generative AI. We can see here some experiments. This was actually an experimental project for imagining a retail store for an imaginary dream-like retail store for Nike. So creating a world that was virtual, was not physical, but created a huge amount of interest and a huge amount of stimulus also to create a type of new narrative for brands and also for customers who were beginning to understand the implication of using technology. This also led to, and if we could look at slide number 18, this is an experimental approach also to retail design. And we can see this very, very space-like type of, again, imagined Nike retail store on Mars. So new innovations, offering sensory ways for brands to connect with consumers. But of course, this has to be taken into the real world. This has to be taken into the physical world after years of sensory deprivation. So brands are increasingly looking to tap into this reality. So tech-powered sensorial enrichment. We can see also how this is played out to a certain extent in product. And I don't know if you're familiar with this sort of insane reality, the absurdist reality also for product. If we could look at slide 19. This was a very, very interesting experiment, which of course then went viral and created a huge demand. It was actually a New York art collective, MSCHF, who launched these oversized boots in early 2023. They resemble something from, Japanese cartoon character. But these made a huge, huge contact with Gen Z and young millennials who were tapping into this sort of dreamlike concepts. So affecting the aesthetic also for brands and retailers in order to translate that those dreamlike ideas also into product itself. If we look at slide 20, we can see also how this has been playing out in physical retail. This is an example of one of the retail stores of Louis Vuitton. This is actually in Asia, but the idea was replicated over many of their flagship stores globally. This was launched in collaboration with Yayoi Kusama, who's a Japanese artist who's particularly well known for her random polka dots. And the team worked with the artist, not just in the development of product, which of course we can see here in the slide, in ready-to-wear, leather accessories, bags. Some of these were limited edition, but some were part of their seasonal collection. And then the stores around the world were suddenly covered in these signature dots. Some also contained robots that were modeled after the artist. This was particularly true of visual merchandising. In the Vuitton store in the Champs-Élysées in Paris, there was a robot that was constantly on display that actually looked like a larger-than-life version of the artist herself, as if she was painting her actual polka dots in the window of the store. This also played out in the external part of the store. And here we can see, if we change to slide 21, we can see how the polka dots were then applied to the actual building, to the architectural plan of the building. And then we can see also the top of the store that she looks like she's leaning over from the roof and actually placing those polka dots herself on the store fronts. So one can imagine, without even entering into the store, this is very, very important historical landmark in Paris, which of course is also a city that has a huge amount of tourism, was something that stopped people in their tracks. It was something that was incredibly potent, incredibly powerful, and created, of course, a huge amount of buzz, and created this need also for something that was special, something that was much bigger than the actual transactional aspect itself. Now I want to talk about community. So let's take a little bit of a jump. If we could go to slide 24. I've included some visuals also here regarding community. So rebuilding community is the fundamental social challenge of our era. So the biggest opportunity brands have is getting people to connect with each other. And this is something that, of course, also in sociological analysis, we have the data to back up that this is particularly true of Gen Z. So here, let's look at some examples that have actually, where brands have written this type of approach into their retail strategies. So let's look at slide 25. So here we can see this is a much celebrated new store. This is the running brand On. It's a Scandinavian brand that uses what I was discussing with you earlier, technology together with this aspect of something that's social and community. So technology and community activation. This is its first flagship store, which is in Regent Street in London. And it was inspired by a science museum. So not only is it a place to connect with community and to learn by using technology, it's also this idea of something that is almost museum-like. Why do we go to learn about our past, about our future, about human reality? We go to a museum. Where do we learn about art? We go to a museum. So incorporating this idea also with community and technology is a very, very potent combination. So everything in the store, again, there's been a lot of attention to ethics and sustainability, sourcing local materials, but everything in the store has been designed specifically to represent what On believes running looks and feels like in London. So there are these virtual physical experiences where prospective customers can try their running floor, can measure their performance, and also the store offers space for talks, workshops, and events. So again, of course, this is something that's hugely beneficial to the actual building of the community itself. Here we can see this is a very, very experimental approach. This is Adidas. And this is from an example from a new rollout of physical stores that they're doing in the Orient, where online retail becomes an accepted norm, but with more and more consumers looking to shop physically. So again, this omni-channel approach, connecting digital with physical, and then offering these virtual digital experience in store. Here we have a series of multi-sensorial phygital installations. So it's very, very interactive. It's where customers, or rather those who are visiting the store, because they might not be customers, it's not supposed to be a transactional experience. It's supposed to be an experience of its own. So customers might not be buying, they might just be playing here. So they can interact with these installations, they can play games, they can take part in a raffle and competitions in order to win products. And we can see an example here. If we move to slide 27, we can also see an example of, I hope the resolution is clear enough. This is, again, in the same store where through augmented reality, visitors can create their own soundtrack, their own videos, and then actually perform it within their own physical space, and then record what it is they've created and, of course, take it with them. So providing a space that's purely for play. So again, here, there's no product featured. Adidas are not looking to sell anything here. They're looking for the visitor to have fun, to build, perhaps, again, their own community, or also to have fun on their own by constantly stimulating these new type of approaches to something that's more ludic and joyful and playful. And then if we move to slide 28, this shows you something that is very, very current. So I've called this site-specific experiential retailing. Here, Dior, the French brand, have been very, very active in this particular area, but I could have mentioned many brands who have taken this path. Holiday souvenirs is a strategy of the Dior's collection, Dior Riviera. And this was very, very much focused on Europe. So some of the most sort of high-end beach resorts here in Italy and also in Greece, in Spain, in France, where Dior developed a range of product that was celebrating the actual specific site. So celebrating the city, celebrating Mykonos, celebrating Capri. So a range of product, a capsule collection, that had the name, of course, of the location, and where consumers could buy a souvenir of the experience of actually being in the Dior store, but of course also being in that holiday destination. We know also that customers are much more receptive to buying, to spending money if they're on holiday. In fact, we can see also many fashion brands are now moving into owning their own hotels, again, enlarging their lifestyle portfolio. Louis Vuitton have a hotel chain called Belmont, and Fendi have experimented also with opening of hotels in the Orient. So this is perhaps also going to become something that becomes a big important part of brand's portfolio, because they can connect all these dots by also situating the brand and the perception of the brand within a specific area of enjoyment where one goes on holiday. So it makes also, if we go to slide 29, it makes also the whole aspect towards merchandising and the creating of collections something that's quite different. So here we can see, again, I've used the example of Dior, but we can see here creating this emotional connection, because souvenirs are to remember. That's why one buys a souvenir. If I look at I'm sitting here in Florence, and Florence, of course, is a city that's much visited by international tourists. And what do? They'll buy a souvenir, perhaps, that reminds them of the Ponte Vecchio or a very important landmark. And that way they'll always remember, of course, their holiday in Florence. So it's not just selling a product, but it's selling the emotions and memories associated with it. So what does this connection create? It communicates value because it tells a story, it's a narrative. It's different, so differentiation. It makes this also, through this narrative, through this storytelling, a story that can only be told where you are. So it gives visitors a reason to make that purchase special, because it's something they can only find there and they can't find anywhere else. And then, of course, it enhances the experience. So it's part of a visitor experience. So when you add that narrative, you add that storytelling aspect, it becomes part of the experience itself. So therefore, you're left, or the consumers left, those who purchased, who made that investment, are left again with these pictures and memories and feelings that they associated with where they were. I'll just give you one last example of this. If we go to slide 30, this is where it's been taken that little step further. So again, I've used an example of Dior because they're particularly at the forefront of this. And this is the Dior store, which is not a store. It's actually a house. This was opened just this summer in Forte dei Marmi, which is a beach resort, a very sort of high-end Tony beach resort on the coast near Florence. And this was how you could live in a Dior house. So it wasn't going to a store. There was no aspect of anything transactional. We can see the whole store was furnished with the very recognizable brand identity and iconic products of the brand, the Toile de Jouy motif, which is instantly recognizable as part of Dior's design language. It was also to celebrate Italian craftsmanship. So the interior was all custom made, of course, for the house itself. So again, giving an experience to the customer where they could have coffee, they could have a glass of champagne, they could browse, of course, the products, but there was no pressure for them to buy because it was a completely different atmosphere from their retail store in the center of the town. This was something that was very much encouraged for the visitor to feel that they were actually living in a Dior reality. And then if we go to slide 31, we can see how that played out also in the garden of the house. If we could go to slide 31. We can see here how, again, the motive of the iconic Toile de Jouy motive is on the chairs and on the umbrellas. The garden is landscaped also with a great respect to the plants that were used. Plants that are suited to the Mediterranean climate. So again, here, customers, they weren't customers. So we also have to change our language. Here, visitors were invited to stay, to learn more, to chat, to socialize with each other, and use, of course, the backdrop of the Hoard Dior reality in order to enhance their visit. And this is also something that many other high-end luxury brands are planning subsequent editions going forward not just for summer resorts, but also for winter sports and ski resorts. And Hermès, the French brand, are actually going to be they're opening their own Hermès house in, again, Forte de Marmé next summer. So it's very, very interesting to monitor how this approach, of course, will enhance the image and the narrative and storytelling of the brand. And this all signifies, as I said, huge changes in retail reality that I think are particularly exciting. So if we go to slide 32, I want to thank you for taking part, and I hope that was informative. And now, of course, we can have some questions and answers, and I'm here willing to answer any of the questions that you might have. Thank you all. So will I read them from the chat?
Fiona.
Yeah. So Olivia, I'm not very sure. Do you want to perhaps ask me the questions that are being asked?
Yeah, actually, hello, Fiona. Thank
Hello.
you for your presentation. It was amazing to know all the historic records of luxury retailing and how is it evolving now, different aspects in fashion. Well, there are some questions from our alumni. So the first one, I write them here. Sara Perez is asking, Fiona, what did you study to work in this area?
A very good question. Yes, my background is fashion design. So I studied fashion design at Kingston University in London. And I came straight to Italy to work. So really, I've worked all my adult life in Italy. But using Italy also as a base, so also having a lot of experience in the UK and France, Germany, I've worked a lot also in the Orient. And going from, I set up my own consultancy business, designing collections for mostly the luxury market. I worked for many, many years with both menswear and womenswear. So with Corneliani, or for many years with Max Mara, both very, very well-known Italian luxury brands. But then I began to introduce also non-design aspects to my consultancy. And started working on distribution, retail strategies, branding, product strategy, side by side, often with my design consultancy, and also work, of course, with other consultants in order to refine particular concepts or strategies that, of course, were being asked for the brands that I was working with. So I've had a very, very, perhaps quite unusual way of working, because I have what we say the right side, left side, so the creative aspect, but also with the business side, and managed to merge the two together, which I've always found, particularly exciting. And I think also a creative mind has to know how to manage creativity. So those two, I think, at least in my case, have worked very, very well together.
Wow, impressive. Yeah, well, there's lots of questions, so I'm gonna try to pick from the beginning.
Okay, what do you think is going to be most useful also for everyone?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's from Jesus Arellano. It says, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge for luxury omnichannel nowadays?
For luxury omnichannel, well, that's also a very good question. It depends also where the brand is in the market. Because, of course, if we're talking about the big, very, very, leveraged, very, very well structured brands that, of course, have a huge amount of capital available to them, because often it's the access to sophisticated technology that makes the difference. Because, again, brands are constantly having to implement and update, because this is also something that changes in real time, their technological systems in order to be closer and more reactive and more flexible and give better service also to their customers. But for them, money is not a problem, because they have the capital in order to invest. When it's smaller brands, it's much more problematic. So therefore, in order to be successful, to be an e-commerce retailer, of course, we know that it's the tech in order to have success that is most important, and together with logistics. So therefore, you need capital, you need investment in order to create the right omni-channel strategy. You might be a small brand that has some physical retail, perhaps also through wholesale or multi-brand retailing, and you have your own e-commerce platform, but you've got to find a way of how you're going to implement a system that complements both. And of course, they both can operate simultaneously. This has also changed for many, many brands who, of course, before the pandemic, were shipping online from logistical wholesale warehouses in airports. This is not possible if brands are now doing click and collect, because they need to have access also for this product that is on their online platform, but they have to be able to furnish from a direct physical retail store. So this is a huge, huge change maker. So therefore, really, it's investment in technology, the understanding of logistics, and understanding that the two have to be, of course, very, very complementary and have to be able to work together.
Okay. Well, and now there's a couple of questions about young entrepreneurs and fashion students that are starting in this area. So basically, the questions are among your advice, what you recommend us to do to, for example, get into the luxury industry and to increase those skills you've mentioned at their brands or at their narratives.
I think the best advice for those who want to get into the fashion industry, whether you actually want to work in retail or not, eventually, is to work in retail. This is also something often I discuss with one of the mentors of the master's courses at POLIMODA for fashion merchandising and buying, is Bruce Pask. Bruce Pask is the menswear director of Bergdorf Goodman in New York. He actually comes from an editorial background, but he's become one of the most influential individuals regarding luxury menswear. He also has a great knowledge of women's wear, but he's very, very specialized in menswear. And he often, again, when he's talking to students and mentoring them, he'll say, work in retail, because this is how you understand the market. This is how you understand the way people think. The other skills and tools and instruments you can learn, but you can't learn necessarily that sensitivity and sensibility to understanding people and having that contact. You know, what better contact can you have working in a retail store and trying to look after what the desires of a prospective consumer are? It lets you also understand product, lets you understand retail merchandising strategies. It lets you understand also the psychological, sociological aspects of how fashion brands operate. So it gives you a very, very good overview of what then becomes important, very, very important in the fashion industry overall.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. And now there's also questions about virtual reality and artificial intelligence, AI. Says something like, in the future, how do you see brands being able to get closer to their customers through AI and virtual reality? Considering how is this evolving also?
Well, this is something that's
also,
very, sorry.
Yeah, and the difference between how big brands use this budget. They have big budgets to invest in these technologies, and so how can emerging designers also can get into this?
Yes, well, this also, of course, is a question of how much you have to invest and how big a reach you want to have. Because already fashion brands, some of the most established, but also those that are less structured, have implemented their communication strategies, marketing strategies around augmented reality and artificial intelligence through gaming. Because again, there has been, Balenciaga was one of the first to understand the importance also of gaming and being able to have a virtual reality experience with your own avatar and be able to play the Balenciaga game with your community. And this was a global project. And this, of course, gave a huge amount of data access also to the brand in order to understand the feelings and the opinions and the way, of course, that these users were not Balenciaga customers, but there perhaps were a market or a part of what could be a market that became very, very interesting for Balenciaga. So it depends what you feel your reach was. So as I said, that of course took a huge team and a large amount of capital, and it was a global event that lasted also for quite a number of weeks. It depends also how you as an individual are proficient with artificial intelligence, because we know, of course, now it's become much, much easier to use. So I would say here, to be able to use the established channels and platforms, but to create something that's your own and personal and gives your own unique point of view. It might just be that you're sharing it directly with your followers or who you have access to through your e-commerce platform. Because the most important thing, again, here is when you're selling, is that you're gathering data so that you can then have something that's focused and curated, and you know that you're sending your message to those who are actually interested. So experimenting with the tools, creating your own content, and then of course deciding where you can diffuse that content that will be most beneficial to you and to your community, but create that community. Have a point of view. It's always a really, really big mistake for perhaps young designers to think that they should be keeping everybody happy all of the time. Be really, really sure about what you're best at and look at that. And develop that for a very, very specific follower or visitor or customer.
Okay. Well, now it's a question, a really interesting question about how luxury market, the differences you see between retail of the Asian market, the European market, and also Latin market. Is there a point of view that can you share with us?
Yes, obviously there's cultural differences regarding retail, but also regarding product merchandising, because there's certain colors that can't be sold in Asia. There's certain types of fabrics in Asia, for women's wear, for ready-to-wear, no transparency. Certain colors you can sell in Scandinavia, but you cannot sell in Europe. Certain sensitivities also to fibers and textiles. So for example, the luxury market in the US for knitwear is really very, very concentrated on noble fibers like cashmere. They don't want to buy lamb's wool. So those are cultural differences regarding product. So the cultural differences also for retail are quite dramatic. Because if we're going to compare Asia with Europe, we also have to think of what is the nature of European cities. They are historic. They have narrow streets. They are very, very built up. You can't build a totally new store in the middle of Milan. There's not the space. So therefore, in Asia, where there is land available, where of course it's a very, very growing, not just growing economy, but growing market also from the point of view of demographics, and new cities being built, new secondary cities, new third-tier cities. So therefore, brands have the possibility to build completely new stores that have the space and have the type of approach to architecture and interior design and this experiential aspect that is much more difficult to do in Europe and the United States because of the nature of the cities themselves. Chengdu, which is a secondary city in China, which I think, now I don't remember, but I think it has something like 30 million inhabitants. Chengdu, maybe we don't even know it. Perhaps I know it now, but perhaps many people don't even know the existence of this city. And they have some of the visuals I included in the slides. I skipped them because I was worried we wouldn't have time to finish everything. But there we see the most extraordinary installations. I don't know if you saw the sort of flipping by image of the zebras. These are robotic zebras that are actually performing in the store in real time while people are shopping. Perhaps I can leave here in the link This is an architectural practice, Sybarite, which is based in London. And they are at the forefront of the most experimental, innovative, creative retail interior design and architecture. So if any of the students are interested to look at what they do, you can get a huge amount of information on their website of what they've built, what they've designed, in many, many different geographical realities. So fashion retail, but also hospitality, hotels, restaurants. And it really, really gives you an idea of perhaps what is the present for some and perhaps the future for many.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. For everyone, it's important to register on the link that the staff already gave you at the chat, please. And we're going to start another conference in a few minutes. So now I would like to thank Fiona. And I mean, I think there's lots of other questions, but Fiona, it would be nice if you can tell us where we can find you, or we can see more about your work, to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. I would be very, very happy to. So I've really, really enjoyed taking part in this and love talking to you about something that I am also very, very passionate and interested in. So if it's something that perhaps has helped you make any decisions about your future, whether it might be study or professional, I'm very, very happy that I've been able to do that. So it's been a pleasure to meet you, Olivia, and thank you for the help. And I'm very, very sorry about the technical problems when we began, but you made an excellent job. And I really, really thank you for that. So making it all run smoothly.
Grazie.
Gracias.
Nice to meet you all. Gracias.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.